Hey, welcome back, you guys, to XPPen Artist. And as designated and shown in the thumbnail, we're doing a review today. So I have had a lot of people contact me for reviews. This is something that I enjoy doing. I like looking at products because I am a product designer and illustrator. And I just love, innovative products and products that talk to me and make sense in the studio environment. So the wonderful people at XPPen, whom I have had a relationship with, reviewing products now for about 2.5 years, going on 3 years, and they have sent me a myriad of different products over the years, from smaller non-display tablets, the kind that are on the side and you draw on it, shows up on your host machine, to very large format, 24-inch 2K tablets that you draw on the display. And XPPen is an innovator. They have really pushed that boundary in the studio, from being kind of the status quo, which is measuring up to maybe some of their competitors, to actually now innovating and exceeding their competitors' capabilities. Case in point, their new Artist Pro 16 second gen and 14 second gen, I believe, has 16,000 levels of pressure sensitivity. I don't think there's any other company right now doing that. And you can always be that person that says, well, that's kind of getting into the realm of diminishing returns whenever you get up into that level of pressure sensitivity. But that being said, they did accomplish that feat, and there are products in their lineup that exceed specs of some of the higher priced machines. XPPen is part of a larger group of company that is owned by UGEE, UGEE, and UGEE also owns SenseLab. So you have these three companies that are trading technologies that are obviously competing with each other, but you have different price points, right? You have XPPen right in the middle. You have SenseLab, which is a little bit more expensive. And then you have UGEE, which is kind of on the lower rung of price points. But if you watch the internet for deals, occasionally you can get some of the XPPen products at the really discounted price. And I've had a lot of people question this. Are XPPen products good, right? Do they last? So I have had my 24-inch QHD, which is 2K, 2.5K. Display tablet, 24-inch Pro, now for about 2.5 years. And the only real issues that I have with that particular product would be the screen, the plastic screen covering they put over it. Because I draw a lot, I have already had to replace it at 2.5 years. And that is something that I look at as wear and tear. It's no different than the pen nibs that they include. And that is, I had to do the same thing on my Wacom, right? So you can definitely say that it could be user issue. But at the end of the day, these are things that I expect whenever I use a display tablet, because I draw on it a lot and I use it. Case in point, so they make a myriad of different products. If you go onto their website, they've got different sizing tiers. They've got different colors. They've got large format, small format. They got 4K. They got touch. So XPPen has really endeavored to really cover a myriad of different users and customer bases, so they can really be a resource for artists and creatives alike. So what am I doing today? As noted in the thumbnail, we are going to review the Artist display tablet, the 22R Pro. So this is the smaller version, right? The smaller version of the 24-inch that I've been working on for 2.5 years. Why did they send me this tablet? First of all, they entrusted me to do the review. Sorry about that. That was fun. My gel on my light in the background came off. Anyway, technical challenges. So they've entrusted me to review their product with without a SKU, meaning I didn't get paid for this review. I'm doing this in and amongst my own volition. Now, they did provide the tablet so I can review it, but they didn't ask me to give them a glistening, wonderful review. They want honesty, because at the end of the day, honesty is what improves their products. So they sent this over, first of all, because it is a specific time of the year. And of course, being this time of year, which is fall festival, Halloween, they asked if I would do a Halloween illustration, which I said absolutely. I've last year and the year before, I believe I did something for them for Halloween, so I really enjoy doing this for XPPen. But they sent this over and they basically said, use this and explain, line theory, what line is in the context of illustration and design, and also color. How do I use color? So first of all, we're gonna do an unboxing, because that's part and parcel to the user, the YouTube review process. We do an unboxing. We look at how they package the item and what you can expect whenever you purchase the Artist Display 22R Pro. What makes this a Pro model? Why 22-inch is a great size for illustrators and designers, and what capabilities this particular machine has. Now, as I'm looking on their website, because I'm one for transparency, I'm looking on their website, and it's got some features that I would say are quote unquote industry standard. A lot of the companies now are doing 4K, 2.5K, which XPPen does. But at this particular price point, which retails for $599, and right now it's for sale on their website for $479, I think at that price point, this large format display tablet is a winner. I've used the 24-inch for years, and this being basically the same machine, but a little bit smaller. Now, this is HD and not 2K. So let's keep that in mind. It does have 8,192 levels of pressure sensitivity, which again, industry standard. And if you want something a little bit more, they do, XPPen does sell that at 16,000 levels of pressure sensitivity on those other models mentioned earlier in the intro. So is this a quote unquote pro machine? I think that at the end of the day, pro machines have to have a few things, right? They have to have color correction. This has 90% of Adobe RGB, which is good for, for color correction and doing things with Pantone. And also sRGB, 120% saturation. So adding brilliance to creation with more exquisite details and vibrant colors. It is full HD, so 1080 by 720, I believe. Don't quote me on that as I go through their website looking for the specs. And it's 21.5 diagonal. So it is basically 22. They round it up because, that's the way marketing is. It does have an anti-glare coating, and I talked about that earlier. And it says high transparency anti-glare coating. And that is important because, in a studio environment like this one, I've got a lot of lights going on, right? I don't want to have to fight with the glare. I remember way back in the day, I had an old competitor product in the studio, not in my studio, but in a professional setting. And I ended up scratching the anti-glare coating, and I peeled it off. And when I peeled it off, it was so shiny, I had to adjust the lights behind me. So just know you won't have to apply anything. It comes pre-applied, which is really cool. It does have, again, that pen, which is 8,192 levels of pressure sensitivity. It is batteryless. That is the EMR technology that they use. They use it for, I think, all of their styluses now. And that is awesome. It's got 60 degrees of tilt for those of you who are interested in that. 16.7 million colors, contrast 1,001, 5,080 LPI. So these are numbers, and a 16.9 aspect ratio, which in film terms, that is the cinema display. So for those of you who go to the movies And a lot of times you'll watch a movie and it's kind of smaller. That's called flat, right? You have scope, which is cinescope, which is 16.9, and then you have flat, which is I think it's 4.9 aspect ratio. Don't quote me on that. I'm trying to reference these numbers for those of you who really care. What's great about this is it's USB-C. So it'll plug right in to your host machine. And of course, it's got a power cord that goes to a power supply because it is a larger high definition screen. So from my experience with the 24-inch, I'm expecting very similar results, right? I reviewed that 24-inch display tablet 2.5 years ago, and it was fantastic. And literally, it is my professional machine. I use it every single day, and I have other options. And I keep coming back to that beautiful display, to the form factor of the large format, and the quality. And what's cool about the Pro machine, too, if you compare and contrast to some of the other machines in their lineup that are large format that don't have that Pro name next to it, this one has the quick keys on the left and right. So it's got a very eclectic selection of quick keys that are programmable, and it's got scroll wheels on the left and the right side. So that is awesome. I'm very excited about that. And it is set up to be Versa mounted, which we will end up Versa mounting it on the studio bench behind me. And that's where we will be testing it. It does come with a stand, which is also important because some of the smaller ones that XPPen sells does not come with a stand. Now they started selling their new tablets, like the 14-inch Pro TP, I believe it's the second generation, and that one does come with a stand. And also they have a 16. Let me see over here. Oh, it's not the TP. So here's the 14-inch right here. As you see, the 14-inch. This has a stand included, as you can see on the back, really, right here. And this is probably great for those who don't want to go out and buy a Versa mount, because Versa mounts, let's be honest, are expensive. But enough talking. Let's go ahead, get to the unboxing. And after that, we're going to start with our drawing. And my channel is different than others, and you look at this time that the video is, and you're like, an hour. Oh my gosh, when most videos on YouTube are like 14 minutes, 15 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes. You just want to get in and out and bam, 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 bam. And I think that's the real issue whenever it comes to YouTube, because we as consumers and media content consumers, and we ingest a lot of content, we fail miserably at paying attention, right? We're being trained basically for 6 and 7 and 10-second videos, and then we laugh and we move on to the next one. And suddenly we sit down and we've spent an hour and 20 minutes and we've watched like 75 videos. And what have we really learned from them? Not a lot, right? Let's be honest. I'm guilty as the next guy. And that's why my videos are a little bit longer, because I do a deep dive. I look at the minutia of the product. I tell you my real world experience, because I have 23 years going on 24 years as an illustrator in the professional world, working for Universal Studios, Warner Brothers, Disney, Pixar, Nintendo. So I look at it from that aspect. Is it going to last? Is it going to work? How does it look in the studio environment? Is it heavy when I pick it up, right? These are things that you're going to run into whenever you open up that box, which, by the way, the box is huge. When you open up that box and you start using it, and then once I start drawing it, I talk about how it feels, right? The machine doesn't do its job unless it becomes quote-unquote transparent. And that is something that I talk a lot about on my channel, and how technology doesn't need to impede me from being creative. It doesn't need to stop me, right? Yesterday, case in point, and I don't mean to go on long, but I get so passionate about this. I want you to really understand that whenever it comes to products, they need to be, especially in the art world, they need to be transparent. Case in point, yesterday, when I was working on my Mac, right? And this has nothing to do with the XPPen product, or it might have to do something with the Mac. But either way, the file that I was, in Illustrator, the file that I was manipulating was about almost a gigabyte. A gigabyte in Illustrator. You guys know who use Illustrator. Typically, Illustrator files are, below a megabyte. So whenever you're working with a gigabyte file or 900 megabyte file in Illustrator, you know that yeah, there's a lot going on in it. And obviously I don't structure my files that way. I don't create gigantic Illustrator files. It's not my MO. And I was manipulating an asset produced by a larger corporation. We're not going to talk about who. And the artist did things that weren't conducive for the production. So here I am on the production side trying to manipulate an asset, right? Part of the bigger picture of the product I'm designing. And it's hanging up. It's slow. It's stopping. Now I've got an M2 Pro, so I know my computer is not the issue. I know that the computer tablet is not the issue, or the drivers. But in the midst of, I'm trying to create something, and what is stopping me? What is stopping me from being creative? It's the product. It's the machine. It's whatever it is, it's stopping me. And I always want the products I use to become transparent. I use a myriad of different tablets, resources from Microsoft to Apple to XPPen to Huion to Sense Labs. I mean, Yugi, I use Samsung. I use just a myriad of different products, and I want them all to not stop me from being creative. And as soon as a product does that, then it gets a bad taste in your mouth. Who has ever started a computer up, right? And what happens, especially a PC? Updates. You got 40 minutes worth of updates. Suddenly your creative mojo goes down, and you start cursing the computer. I curse you for keeping me safe from viruses. But the reality is that's something that I take very seriously. And as long as the machine, display, tablet, computer does not impede me from being creative, then most of the time the review process is very positive. Very rarely have I had a product fail miserably in what it was designed to do, right? So let's go ahead, do the unboxing. We're going to get started. We're going to talk a little bit about the experiences I've had using the 24-inch, which basically is the sister to the 22-inch R Pro. And we're just going to have some fun today, right? We're going to do an illustration. We're going to talk about line. We're going to talk about color. We're going to talk about mood, some character design. I'm just going to have some fun today. Maybe the video goes over an hour. Okay, so what? Maybe you'll learn something today. Enjoy the process. And just know that, again, I come at this from a person that has experience. And, experience will trump theory. It will trump a lot of other things that people think are truth out there, where experience, I've already gone through the trenches. I've already seen certain things. I'm comparing it to all the other experiences that I've had before. And hopefully this will put a spin on your opinion that will point you in the right direction, whether it's not buy XPPen or whether it is to buy XPPen. Like I said, I'm constantly being asked, compare this device with this device. And I said, well, I can't really do that because, they're completely two different devices. They're two different aspect ratios, two different companies. They're two different machines. You're hooked up to two different graphics cards. I mean, there's so many variables there. So let's go ahead. Let's do the unboxing, and we'll have some fun today, okay? All right, guys, enjoy. Okay, so this is me doing the unboxing. Pretty standard. The XPPen 22R Pro is a large display tablet, so make sure that whenever you unbox it, you have ample room to do so, and be super careful. Everything was exactly where it needed to be. Very, very good. And this is the XPPen 22R Pro setup. I wanted to show you my setup because it's probably not normal that somebody has two large display tablets. So on the left I have the 22, and comparatively speaking on the right I have the 24 hooked up as well. So yeah. Okay, and here is the XPPen 22R Pro setup. Finally, right? So I'm going to do a really quick line test. I want to get on to the illustration demo because the illustration demo takes quite a long time, right? So let's go ahead and, let me see, we'll add a layer, edit, fill. We're going to fill white. So line tests to me are, they're I don't want to say unnecessary nowadays, because every single tablet has its own ecosystem, right? Its own type of driver. The pins are different. The resolution of the screens are different. You know, with 8,192 levels of pressure sensitivity, a lot of times one of the things that will cause an issue would be the user, right? I'm not a robot, so you're going to see variations in line, right? The pressure sensitivity of the 22R Pro is absolutely phenomenal. It feels great. Right? I've got a textured brush right now. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to shrink that brush down a little bit. Brush size, a little bit. Okay. So you can see that there's not a lot of shoestringing going on. A shoestring would be if it was like this, and then you would see an anomaly right here that would kind of taper off and be uncontrollable. The pressure curve is really good throughout the entire application of pressure, from really light to really heavy, right? Back to really light. I don't have typically any problems when it comes to XPPen and their pressure curve. So what I'm going to do is, a lot of people, oh, you need to use a straight edge. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and change brushes here, because that's the typical drawing brush that I utilize, because it's got a texture on it. And also the pressure curve is really good. I'm trying to find just the standard. Where's my standard brushes? Gotta have the standard basic. Okay, we'll do basic brushes. Let's do basic brushes. Hard mechanical. Oh, that's the wrong color. So let's do... Okay, let's do black. Okay, let's make that a little bit bigger. Okay. You know, and also, I hate to say it, but sometimes the brush that you use will cause some challenges here and there. Right, so here, see, like this. This is, I would say, an acceptable level of shoestringing right there. So it's bare. I mean, the pressure curve is nice, 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 and then it kind of tapers off, right? You'll have it shoop, shoop, kind of taper off. But overall, I mean, I've never had any real issues, like I said, with XPPen and their pressure curves. So let's go ahead. We'll draw a straight line, vertical, completely straight, no problems. Whoops. Completely straight, no problems. And a lot of people look at the diagonal test, line test, because that will be the kind of telltale sign whether or not the digitizer is any good. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to go really slow. And what I'm looking for is a mechanical wiggle, something that is consistent, right? You'll see hills and valleys, like it'll go like here, 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 here. And you can tell that that is not indicative of a traditional you know, straight line or a human applied line, if it's mechanical like this. But as you see the lines, I mean, there's a slight wiggle, but I'm using a piece of paper, so you can't really, I don't have a metal straight edge that I can use. So let's go ahead. And so whenever I run my tip along this is a textured surface, so you're going to have a little bit of a textured surface here and there. So like I said, line tests are one of those things that, you know, a lot of people like. So that's why I do them, right? You got to do what the people like. So now if I go with no straight edge, right? Whoops. It'd be good if I had a value you could see. So, like I said, I don't see any mechanical wiggle. Anything like this, this, and this, you can see that even the valleys, you know, some of the valleys are there. They're not consistent. If I were to use like an Intrig or Microsoft Pen Protocol or something like that, I mean, it would be like this. You could see, you know, most machines these days have tried to weed out some of that wiggle. But overall, I think XPPen has nailed the pressure curve with this particular device. And here's the deal. So I have a 24-inch Pro that I use every single day. I use it in my professional work. And previous to that, I had used a Wacom 22 HD. And, you know, the 22 HD had like just over 4,000 levels of pressure sensitivity. And when I came over to the 2K 24-inch model, I did have a discernible, noticeable difference in accuracy of the pen. So there is something to note about the 8,192 levels. It does make a difference. Now, whenever you jump to the 16, which is on one of their other, on one of the other tablets that XPPen sells, I think that, you know, a lot of people have said diminishing returns, you're not going to see a real difference. I did. I felt more of a natural difference. Now, is it worth, if you you know, want the 16, great. You know, it's, the price point is really reasonable. But at the end of the day, the way that I draw and how messy I draw, I'm not in there going and doing like super, super detailed illustration, right? I'm not getting in there and like going and doing exacting pixels. So for me, the 8,192 for the form factor, right? Whenever it's 22, 24-inch, that's what I want. Drawing on a smaller surface for me personally is, it's not a challenge, but I think that I've gotten so used to the large format, and I use reference, and I draw really big. So that is something that, you know, I look for in a tablet. Not only the size, the industry standard pressure, this is full HD, the color gamut. So let's go ahead and get started on the illustration. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. Let's go ahead and get our sketch. So I've already done a sketch of what I'm going to work on today. And we're going to go ahead and show you that sketch really quick. And you can see it's Phoenix the Fox. Yay, Phoenix the Fox. This is a thumbnail. I did really quick yesterday. It took me about 25 minutes, 30 minutes to do it. And I used their icons. So a few years ago, like I had mentioned, I did an illustration for them for Halloween that showed Phoenix as a little vampire, and he had just eaten, or he's sitting on a bunch of pumpkins, and he really, really enjoys eating candy. I might show that near the end to kind of do a compare and contrast. But this sketch, like I said, didn't take me too long, and I used a 22R Pro, and it performed flawlessly because I always like to kind of do something before I actually do the something. So what we're going to do is first of all, something that I've never done before, which is utilize the quick keys on the left-hand side and the right. I'm right-handed, so I'm not going to come over here and use these quick keys too much, but you can program these quick keys on the left and the right. And also, I'm going to be utilizing the XPPen quick key remote. They do have a newer version of this, and actually I've got one. I just haven't hooked it up because I like this one. I've had this one for about 6 years, 5-6 years, and it's phenomenal. It's about $40. You can go in and pre-program your quick keys, and it's dongle functioned, and you can plug in the dongle and install the driver, and you can install this on a PC, on a Macintosh, or whatever you need to. And I love it. I love the quick key remote. And I've got my keyboard positioned up here in case I need to utilize it. And I've pre-programmed the keys over here on the right-hand side to finally use, because I don't know why I don't use the quick keys. Probably because I use muscle memory with my left hand. So let's go ahead, and we're going to put this on a transparency layer. Okay, and we've got our other layer already locked in there. We're going to start talking a little bit about lines. So one of the things that the XPPen people wanted me to kind of explain, they wanted to, you know, talk about line work. And also they wanted to talk about color. So we'll get to color, but right now, since I'm going to go and refine the sketch. So what I recommend, if you're following along, is to take notes, right? We all want to take notes. So I am a illustrator. I come from a animation and illustration background, and I've worked in the toy industry now for about, gosh, I've been in the commercial field for over 22 years, 23 years. I worked in the toy industry since 2014. And previous to that, I was in apparel and traditional illustration. I did murals and stuff like that. So my main way of communication as it pertains to illustration are lines, right? I did also come from a painting background, so I have a large swath of painting capability and also some watercolor. But I fell in love with sketch, right? With line work. Line work to me it's poetic, right? Lines and how they translate and how they communicate the ideas and creating forms and motion. And it just, I fell in love with it, you know, way back in the day whenever, you know, animation was really prevalent. You know, I'm just breached the 50-year-old mark. So I have seen the field of art and illustration go from traditional over to digital, and that conversion that some people have challenges with, right? They have challenges. They can't convert to digital. And I'm like, well, if you get one of these display tablets, then it's not going to be such a huge issue, because the way that they're designed is to emulate you drawing on paper. And you're like, how can you draw on paper when you're drawing on such a big screen? It's kind of sterile. It is, and it's sterile meaning kind of separated from the texture, right? The XPPen people have done a great job of working in, you know, some of those things that we as artists really value, which is maybe a little bit of rubberized tip as it glides across the surface. And also with the textured surface, it kind of feels, right? It feels like paper. I don't want it to be too textured, right? Because not every I'm getting kind of mixed up here in my brain. Not every project is going to be the same. So I need to have that flexibility, and XPPen has really worked in, you know, some of those great things. So what I'm doing right now is I've placed that sketch layer on a transparency in Photoshop. We're actually working in Photoshop. And I've got my 22R Pro hooked up to my host machine, which is a Macintosh, as you see the menu down here. Now, some of you have questioned, what is the best setup? What is the best, you know, whatever? And I think that, first of all, it all depends on your budget. It all depends on just a myriad of things, you know, what your preference is. Me, I'm a Mac guy. And I definitely have, you know, felt the brunt of making the mistake of going out of a PC, because unfortunately, with PCs, and this isn't true for everyone, this is just true for me, I basically, you know, I felt like I was constantly updating the machine and all the drivers, and some of you PC guys are giggling right now. And even though it was a great machine, and I own PCs, I think I own like 4 of them, 3 or 4 of them, and I still utilize them. But for me, I think for the time being, especially in my professional work, I'll be using a Macintosh, and that's what we'll be using today. So what am I doing? A lot of you think that I'm tracing, and I'm not. I am figuring out what is the best path for the line to go. I'm looking at my reference right here, and you can see that he doesn't quite look like Phoenix completely. He's got some design cues. Maybe his eyes are a little bit too close together, right? Maybe his head is misshapen. And that's why, you know, you do character studies, you do reference things like this. Now, this was sent to me by XPPen. It's a little resin statue of Phoenix, and I love their little guy. He's fun to draw, and I think that you know, the more they use him, you know, the more that they'll definitely reach out and touch people, because he's a fun guy. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just going in, and I am refining the sketch, pushing and pulling those lines, those forms, and trying to figure out what the best you know, the best path is. So as I talk about, you know, illustration and digital artwork and digital illustration, hopefully I can draw at the same time, because I'm not really one to do that very effectively. Now, like I said, it only took me about 25 to 30 minutes to do the sketch. You take as long as you need to do that. I have, like I said, a lot of experience in doing this, and a lot of times that experience, it can work for you, but it also, man, let's make his eyes a little bit bigger. It can also work against you because, whoops, wrong one. It can also work against you because you'll be doing something, and then since it's not working out the way you want it to, suddenly you'll get frustrated. And you're like, well, that happens to me all the time, Mike. Yeah, it happens to me too. And I'm like, I've done this before. Why can't I do it again? And the thing is every single drawing is going to be different. Every single drawing is going to have a life of its own. It's got its preliminary stage, then it's got its birthing stage. And then once you've birthed the illustration or the drawing, then you can go back in and refine and just have some fun. That's really, one of the things that I always talk about, especially whenever I'm teaching, is learning. And, every single drawing is going to be a learning process. It's not the same, right? Even if you're doing the same character over and over again, you're going to develop certain, actions to draw that character. And I think that, sometimes we can get a little lackadaisical about things, but some of those actions, like, I had the opportunity years and years ago to draw Scooby-Doo. And I had never drawn Scooby-Doo before, even though I had watched him 100,000 times on television. Like I said, I'm 50, so I grew up with Scooby-Doo. And I had never really drawn him before. And I'm like, what? And I'm trying to do him, and I'm so familiar with the character visually, but it's such a challenge to learn something new, and you want to be successful at it the first time. And that was kind of one of the eye-openers that I had in my career, in the fact that I didn't do it right. I didn't do it right the first time. I didn't do it right the second time. Heck, I didn't even do it right the third, fourth, fifth, 10th, 12th. I probably went through about 50 different drawing exercises and sketches to finally get it. And then finally, see, I'm not used to using these. And finally, I stopped for a minute, and I'm like, okay, so let's go back to basics. Basics. What are basics? Basics are form, right? Line. I'm not going to get into the principles in art and design, but whenever it comes to drawing stuff like that, motion, weight, and of course, character. When I broke Scooby-Doo down into his basic shapes, I was able to, dang it, I did it again. I was able to go back and look at what I had already done and say, okay, this is what I need to do to make him actually look like Scooby-Doo. And lo and behold, it worked. Let me make his ears a little bit larger, because if you look at Phoenix, he is huge. I think he is a fox, but he's a specific kind of fox, right? You're going to be like, you're yelling at the screen, he's a blankety blank. Well, that's fine. But anyway, like I was saying, pertaining to the Scooby-Doo experience, it was very enlightening. And of course, I was doing stuff for a client, doing stuff for Cartoon Network, and it's always fun whenever you do the characters for the actual company that not only manages the assets, but controls the creative vision of Scooby. And of course, they looked at the stuff and they liked it, but at the end of the day, I didn't end up getting the job. And that's okay, because I didn't want to have to move and all that other stuff. But I did get paid, which is very nice. And I think it's not that I didn't do well. It's just the direction changed for the particular job. And that unfortunately happens, right? You'll do stuff, and then, you think you did a great job, which you probably may have. And then suddenly everything changes. No, we're not going in that direction anymore. Okay. That happens. So as you see, again, I'm pushing and pulling, and I talk about pushing and pulling. That means in the hang on, I did it again. In the context of the illustration and the lines, I'm pushing and pulling, pushing those lines back, pulling those lines forward, showing, maybe it needs to be a little bit rounded here. Maybe I'm trying to find the the form there. And basically, I'm having fun, right? Needs to be a little bit shaped like that. So let's go ahead and get the eraser right here. Okay. And with this large format, I have the ability to go in and, draw. First of all, I'm sitting back, so my face isn't like right next to the to the screen. And I think that, just literally drawing and having this experience is just phenomenal, right? Okay, he's got these little, his eye sockets come up here. And those eyebrows might go up a little bit further. Okay, so now I'm going to get into some of the larger. Now, as I progress through this illustration, right, you can see, maybe that needs to be erased a little bit. Okay, so that's kind of coming around. He's pulling the guts out of the pumpkin because he's carving a pumpkin. But let's go ahead. He's got a glove on. Okay, have that other thumb come right here. Whoops. Use my pre-programmed quick keys. Okay, so what I'm doing right now, again, I'm just sketching out. I'm still in the sketch phase. Even though I've got a nice sketch underneath, I still want to go in and push and pull some of those forms and some of the lines and get, get the right sketch. That's why I said you can take as long as you want on the sketch, because once you start rendering it, if you have to go back and fix things anatomically or fix things compositionally, it is so much harder. Let's do this. Finger there, finger there. It is so much harder because you've already locked in some of those areas, and it's frustrating, right? You don't want to be frustrated when you're drawing. You have to be analytical, but you also have to allow for some happy accidents, right? Those things that you didn't anticipate on that actually work. In the digital environment, the happy accident is kind of blasé, because you can, if I need to go back, oh, I don't like any of that. I can go back and boom, boom, boom. I can sit there and I can get rid of all these things if I wanted to. If I want them back, I can do that. So the happy accident is something that you have to allow happening, especially in the digital world. So like his eyes, yeah, okay, no, we're fine. I can still change his eyes. I can do that. I'm just wanting to get the next level of illustration and kind of explain what I'm doing in terms of line work. So you'll see sometimes whenever I do overlapping lines, right? Overlapping lines help create form. So if I were to create let's create a layer. Do a little sidetrack here. Okay, so let's have this, right? Okay, the nose right there. Okay, so this jawline, I'm going to have a little bit of a thicker line because it's going to be overlapping his body, right? And everything on the bottom is going to have a little bit of a thicker line. Again, you have these overlapping forms, these overlapping lines that help create form, right? This line comes here, and then it comes from the bottom or out. That overlapping line right there helps create perspective, even when I'm not using light and shadow. So just remember that. Overlapping lines help create form. Okay. Right? Okay, so he's got these safety goggles on. Now, even in the stage, you'll see me put in a little bit of light and shadow because it helps me, helps believability as I as I go through the illustration. it helps me do things. Now, there's a little bit, everybody's going to be doing something different. Like this one right here needs to go out further because it needs to. You see? And two, it helps if you step away from the illustration. Like right now, I'm going to darken in his eyebrows a little bit. Right, and darken in right here. And I can increase the size of that brush. There we go. So these little details help me, like I said, as I progress through, help the movement of the illustration. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put you guys on time lapse. I'm going to let you follow along as I refine and define the sketch. And once I get the line work done, then we'll come back in and we'll talk a little bit about application of color. So like I said, in terms of step process, I start out with a thumbnail, then I move to the refinement stage, which is this stage right here, okay? And then from this, I'll go over to final line, right? That's when you'll start seeing some of the adjustments made. Maybe I don't want the eyes looking directly ahead. Maybe I want him to look at, some of this stuff. Maybe he's looking down at here. I don't know. And as I progress through the illustration, you'll see me make those decisions, right? But overall, I think that we're going to have some fun today. I'm anticipating on this particular drawing taking me, I don't know, taking me 3 hours maybe? 3 hours? So he's got his glove. See, this is a conundrum that I have. So he's got his glove. Now, does his glove have the nails? So I think it does. I think we're going to go ahead and we're going to position, we're going to, include his nails, because again, that helps define his character a little bit more, because, Phoenix is a fox. He's got nails, right? Not like scary nails. They're going to cut your face off, That's one of the things that I don't do. And a lot of people are really good at horror illustration. I am, but I choose not to do it, because at the end of the day, my brand in terms of who I am as an illustrator is just, I want to be fun. I want to be happy. I don't want the artwork to be so thought-provoking. It's not there to change people's lives, and it's just there to, enrich in some way. I'm not here to, to make a statement or anything like that. I just want to have fun, and that's exactly what illustrations like this are. So go ahead, enjoy the time lapse, and whenever I get to a point that I feel like we need to share with you, then we'll stop video, and we will start with the color. So as I progress through, I'm like, these are guts. How do I illustrate guts, right? All these little seeds, we've all done, well, most of us, I'd say, a lot of us have carved a pumpkin. If you haven't, then go out and get a pumpkin, carve it. See what's on the inside. It's quite disgusting, right? I can remember years ago that I got a pumpkin a little bit early. Some people get so anxious and they're like, I want to get pumpkin now. And it's like October 1st. By October 25th or 6th or whatever, that pumpkin's been sitting outside. It's got some smell to it, right? And then you're like, let's carve the pumpkin. Yay! And then you open it up and it's like, bleh. You throw up everywhere. Yeah. Anyway. I'm talking about not having gross stuff and all the pumpkin seeds and stuff. Bleh. Yeah. So as you see, I've got some issues. Now you'll see me do stuff like this too, when I'll go in and I'll put some of those lattice lines that help me define that shape. Because whenever I go to do the final artwork, that's whenever I start injecting some of that line quality. Like this line right here needs to be a little bit thicker because it's in front of the glove. Maybe he's got some stuff on here. A couple seeds that are stuck on there because he reached in. He got the guts of the pumpkin. Right, let's go ahead and get you on time lapse. Okay, so I've gone in and done a few things while you guys were watching. Instead of going through and spending, the next hour and a half going in and making the lines all perfect, I went ahead and just, as you saw in the time lapse, I just went in and refined the sketch a little bit more, right? That's initially what I wanted to do in the first place, and I got kind of bogged down in the logistics of talking and explaining exactly what I was doing. A lot of times what'll happen in the midst of the illustration is I'll get into it and I'll be like, no, my initial sketch has the most amount of life, right? If you look at the sketch, there's a lot of life there. And I don't really want to get rid of a lot of that because through my experience and through the years, a lot of times whenever I'm in the moment, whenever I'm drawing and using my lines, those are the most expressive, and I want to preserve those as much as I can. So that's exactly what I did. I just went back and got all my black lines on a singular layer. And as you see, I still was really loose with the illustration and really loose with the line work. I can't tell you how many times I've done really tight illustration where at the end my hand hurts. And that's not what this is about. That's not what this tutorial is about. It's about being free, getting some freedom from some of that angst that we have as artists and illustrators to kind of expand and have some fun, right? So as you see, I've got my black line down onto the canvas. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and give a little bit of, increased line weight here and there, like on the other part of his lip, right? So we're going to just go ahead and we're going to make that line just a little bit thicker, before I go back and I start putting in color. And we are going to talk about color. That was one of the big things that XPPen really wanted me to talk about, was how to color an illustration. One of the things also I'm looking for are tangencies. So tangencies are whenever we have two lines, right? If we have two lines, let me see if I can find one around here. I always have I don't say I have an issue with tangencies happening, but when I do happen, okay, here's one. So here's a really good example of a tangency. So two lines from different entities inside of the illustration on two different planes are touching. What that does is essentially it flattens the that area. So instead of having these, here, I'll go ahead and zoom in a little bit. So instead of having this right here, right, so you have the front of the toe area. Okay, the front of the toe area that is touching the inner part of the foot area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and switch to my eraser. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to expand this down a little bit to kind of overlap. We had talked earlier about overlapping lines. It's important that we don't have tangencies occur because, again, it deadens the illustration. It deadens the dynamicism of it. And you want to make sure and not have those in your art. So like right here, that's dangerously close to a tangency there, buddy. And you're right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just make that a little bit better. And I'm going to push back this little item right here to kind of help frame that face a little better. Framing, right? We're always thinking about how we're going to frame something. We're always thinking about, we got some loose lines here. Some of these loose lines are basically the lens that goes over his eye, and I wanted to draw those in there just really lightly. We haven't even gotten into light and shadow yet. So let's go ahead and draw this. Again, having these little itty bitty elements are going to help define the form a little bit better. And we're going to have that strap, right? Comes here. I forgot to draw it in. See, it really behooves you to stop a moment and walk away. And I've done that so many times in my career just to get perspective on what I need to do. Like right here, that's close to a tangency. What else? I'm looking. Yeah, not too bad. So I do like how I have this nice dark line that kind of separates. So we have you have something going on here. You have the pumpkin looking at the, I'm going to zoom in using the quick keys. He's looking at this saw, right? So the marker, he hasn't carved this part of the pumpkin yet. So whenever I go and ink it, first of all, my inking, I'm not a good inker. I'll be honest with you. I'm decent at drawing, but inking, you know, there are so many better people at inking because they go in and they can put in really dark ink lines and make it look comic booky. That's not my MO. So the other illustration I did for XPPen is right here. You can see that, I put in shadow, I put in light, I put in the effects, I put in, atmospherics, I put in all those things. But all those things still don't detract from what's going on in the illustration, which is Phoenix, dressed up in a Halloween costume, is enjoying the spoils of his evening raid as a vampire. He likes him some candy. So that's basically my style. I like fun and whimsical. I like very illustrative, very texture feel, and I'm not going to get rid of any of that. So all these lines that you see that maybe you would question as being a little bit, I'm going to go ahead like this. His fur, I'm going to go ahead and leave some of those in because I like that. I like that hand-done feel. And with that, with the levels of pressure sensitivity that this machine affords, I can go in and really give nuance, right? Give little nuance here and there. So I'm going to go ahead, and like I said, I'm going to go ahead and darken some of these lines and thicken up some of these lines, right, to help push and pull some of those forms forward and aft. So like right here, that toe is covered up, so we want that. He's got him a pair of pants on. So I've got to show the pair of pants. You can't see the pair of pants on the other side. And, case in point, whenever I draw fur, less is more. I don't want to get in there and draw every single hair or, do a hairbrush. I'm not going to do any of that. Sometimes whenever a piece is overly inked, you can see it because there's so much dark in there. I don't want to do that, right? I want to go in, I want to make sure the lines effectively tell the story of what's going on in the illustration, right? I don't want to overwork the illustration. You're like, how can you overwork an illustration? It's a drawing. You do it, and you do it until, it's done, right? Well, that's a determination that you're going to have to figure out. At what stage is the illustration, quote unquote, done? Could I have worked a lot more on this piece? Yeah. But at the end of the day, would it have really added that much to the effectiveness of the presentation? No. It reads at a distance, it reads close up, it tells a fun story. That's illustration is done. And we're going to do the same thing here. So, little things like this, like, I can go in and draw a little bit more doodads, but I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to overwork the inks. So we're going to go ahead and make this a little bit darker because this is in front of Phoenix. Having that darker line pushes it forward, so then we're going to have thinner lines back here, right? Again, that importance of understanding when to say enough. And then you have this leaf coming forward. Yeah, okay. But, see, this is a case in point right here. See how that line of the pumpkin runs right into the line of that toe, and what that's doing is it's causing a little bit of grief. So let's go ahead, we're going to go back, we're going to erase that line, and we're going to go here. We can make it a little bit darker on the bottom. Again, to reaffirm that is a form. And you can see some of the lines aren't connected, right? Big deal. I think that some of us are so, caught up in what we refer to as perfection, right? It needs to be perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to, first of all, you need to enjoy what you're doing. You need to be encouraged that this is part and parcel to a process of learning, and you're gonna do your best, and you're gonna call it a day, right? Down a little bit thicker at the bottom. Thicker at the bottom. We're gonna go ahead and flush that. And since he's wearing gloves, I'm not gonna, you know, I had contemplated earlier, do I give him gloves? Do I don't give him gloves? Yeah, let's go ahead and give him gloves. So, okay, so now this little area right there. Sorry about that. Man, you're making me sick. So sometimes certain things don't work out, like that right there. I don't like that. I don't like that. I do, however. There we go. Nice. Let's go ahead and give these. And you're like, why don't you finish all the lines? Because that's another thing that I want to talk about really quick about lines. You don't have to draw everything in, right? Sometimes just the mention of something is enough to make it read well. You know, it's not cutting corners. It's being conscious of the life of the illustration, right? It's like you don't want to sit there and work it and work it and work it and cram it and cram it and cram it and make it bad. So, all right, I think we're good. Whenever it comes to rendering, so as you see in this illustration, my color, then I added shadow, and then I added my light source. So you can do a myriad of things. You can go in, you can block in your grays, you can do a light study, you can determine on where your light's coming from, and all these things. This illustration is just for fun, to show you guys the capability of this particular machine, the 22R Pro, and what it can do. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you know, everybody involved with this particular illustration, from myself to XPPen, want the best product coming forth. But on the other hand, I can't spend 25 hours on this illustration, right? I could, but at the end of the day, like I said, finished, not perfect. That's something everybody should have in their brain. Finished, not perfect. Little case in point, I was talking earlier about quick keys. You can program the quick keys on the pen. Currently, I have it to my brushes whenever I want to really quickly change my brush, and it's pre-programmed to do the eraser whenever you press that back button. So it's really simple to get things done very effectively and quickly whenever you pay attention to those quick keys, right? I follow a few artists online, and they don't use quick keys, and I'm like, I don't know how you survive, bro. Of course, they're a lot more successful than I am, so I don't think it really makes a difference, right? Yeah. Learn your quick keys. They will help make your life easier. Okay, enough said about that. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and block in color. Yay, color! Okay, I've switched programs now. I'm going to start color block in. Now, there's a myriad of ways that I can do this. I can go in and I can put in a gray color as a base, right, for the entire thing. Go ahead and zoom in just a little bit. I can do that, right? So basically what I'll do is I'll put in this gray value. And here, I'll show you what I'm going to do. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to sit here and, you know, bore you with me putting in a gray value. It's not very colorful, is it? It's kind of boring. So the program I'm using, if you're not familiar with it, is called Clip Studio Paint. One of the strengths of Clip Studio Paint is the fact, well, number one, it was developed as a comic book program. So it handles black line very, very well, and its ability to fill in black line, like if I were to just take the bucket right? You can see that it fills things in very well. But what I'm basically going to do is I'm filling in all of these areas. Okay. Good. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as kind of a reference layer. And once I do that, I'll go back in and I'll layer in the color on different layers so I can have complete control over that whole process. So let me go ahead and put you on time lapse as you watch me block in the gray, and then you're going to see me over here on the right hand side. You're going to see me adding layers, and those are basically going to be on top of the gray. Now you're like, well, why did you do the gray? Because whenever I put in this gray as a value, as the actual shape of the illustration of the live area, then I can just go in and really quickly put in the color and just layer everything on top of each other. So it makes things a lot easier. The layer management's much easier. And at the end of the day, I like having a happy, a happy illustration. Not one that I got to go in and mess around with a ton of clipping masks. I like clipping masks, but sometimes I just like going straight forward. Some people actually don't use layers, which I don't recommend, especially if you're a professional. I mean, I worked in the apparel industry for years, and basically I lived in layers, because you have a client that comes in and they're like, I don't like this color, you need to remove this character, you need to do this. And if you didn't have layers, you'd be chopping up your illustration every single time a change came. So it just makes your life easier. All you got to do is go in and, just add a layer. It's that easy. So going to go ahead again, put you guys on time lapse as you watch me block in the rest of the gray. And then after I block in the color, I will probably put in some of the textured shadows and stuff. Again, we go back to this illustration right here. It's the exact same thing that I did for this illustration, and it gives me complete control over all the aspects. I can lighten, darken, I can burn, I can, overlay, I can do clipping masks, and all because of the layer management system that I have over here. Again, Clip Studio Paint, a great program for blocking in color, a great program overall, and it's less expensive than Photoshop. Now, they did go to a subscription model, but at the end of the day, if this is something that you're interested in doing, I highly recommend it. Their rendering engine is really good, and the 22R Pro is seamless with it. It's really good. So you can see where I've bled over a little bit in certain areas right here. Yeah, and we can just get rid of that really quick. Really simple stuff. Just having a little bit of fun. That's all we're doing. We're having some fun here today. We're not going to stress out. We're not going to just get so upset and frazzled that we can't, manage our attitudes. Good attitude. Put a smile on that face. I jest. Because drawing's fun, right? So let's go ahead and get you guys on time lapse. Okay, I wanted to stop midway through because the wonderful people over at XPPen wanted me to kind of overview and give you a base or a foundation for color, right? I could spend the next week on color and how it applies to creating mood in illustration. The way that I utilize color is pretty simple, right? I'm not a quote-unquote colorist, but I do utilize certain things on my illustration and work that really help bring forth the idea. So there is a terminology out there called local color. Local color is a color's base without any light or shadow or different types of light. You have warm light, you have not dark light, you have warm light, you have cool light, and those will affect the color accordingly. Case in point, this particular piece has a very blue hue to it, right? And even though there are very warm oranges in here because of the pumpkins, it still has that cold nighttime hue that really caters to that Halloween feel. So you have contrasting of color temperature, right? So you have the warms of the pumpkins contrasting with the cool of the moonlight. And a lot of times that contrast will really help the illustration read the way you want it to. So what I'm doing right now in the illustrations, basically I'm putting in local color, the base of what the the character is. Like here's Phoenix, and he's got a tan coloration to him, and then he's got his brown eyebrows, so on and so forth. So basically I just go in and block in some of these hues. Now I haven't put any value in yet, and that's important because I'm gonna that's another reason why, I don't even know, it's supposed to be a little bit darker. There's a myriad of ways, like I said, that you can do color. You can do a value study, and then you block color over that. But I'm just putting in local color, and then after that, I'll go in and I'll start putting in my light and shadow. And whenever I put light and shadow in, I'll talk about how I use shadowing and how I use light and reflective light and all that other stuff. But basically, whenever I start blocking in the color, it gives me a feeling, right? I can go in, if I need to, I can go in and change the value of the pumpkins, right? Because I have it on a separate layer. The same thing goes for the pumpkin guts and the innards here. And as I progress through, you see in terms of my layer management over here on the right-hand side, I can go in and pretty much do whatever I want to. I can put a clipping mask over this and I can shade it, and it'll give me, I have complete control over the illustration. So once I get all of the color in, right, I'll go in and I'll adjust the hue of each color depending on the distance from the viewer, right? The stuff that's closer is going to be more saturated. The color that is further away is going to be less saturated because of the distance and the light pollution that happens. And also, not every pumpkin has to be the same color. Let's be honest. That's why I changed the different stems to different colors. And whenever I get all of the local color blocked in, then I'll go in with my light and shadow. So my shadow, I'll typically use a purple hue, or depending on the light, the light environment, depending on that, I might use a green or a blue. It just depends. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to block in all the color, and then I'll come back and I'll talk about how I put in light and shadow, light source. And I am going to have a light source in the back that will basically frame him. Very similar to what I did here. I used objects to frame him as well as this tree line. But I don't think I'm going to do that this time, so we'll see. Anyway, like I said, illustration is one of those processes that takes time, it takes thought, especially, right, if I have an art direction or anything like that. But I'm basically self-art directing this because I've done stuff like this before, so I feel comfortable in doing that. But like whenever I come over here, like you see a little bit of a bleed through that, I'll just go back and I'll correct that really quick. And in Clip Studio Paint, this little lasso tool, Lasso Fill, is wonderful, and I have it clipped down to the gray layer that you saw me apply in the first place. So I can go in and I can just do a really big, you know, and it will only fill where the gray is. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so we're going to continue on blocking in the color, and hopefully you guys are having a good time. Oops, I forgot to do something. Look at that. So whenever I see the line right here is pretty solid, whoops, I can go in and just fill that and then come back and, right, do that. And since it is done with a marker, I'll probably have some little mistakes here of sketches and whatnot. So I think it's turning out pretty good. Definitely as the process continues, I'll come back and narrate a little bit and talk about what I'm doing, because it is important for you guys to understand what's going on, right? You want to know what's going on. I want to know what's going on. I want to be able to explain that to you. And hopefully at the end of the day, you guys will get something that you can take with you, right? Take with you. His tail. Let's go back to his tail. His tail is white and then it turns to brown. Not white, but it's like a tan color. So I should be able to fill that. Yeah. And then I'll come back with the brown color right here. And see, just literally, it's really fast and really simple. It's not paint by numbers, but it can be, and it doesn't have to be hard, because a lot of the rendering stage happens, you know, on the other side of the equation, on the other side, whenever I start putting in the light and shadow, and then I come back with the light, and I come back with reflective light and stuff like that. So, all right, enjoy. Okay, and here's where I wanted to transfer over, right? We're now transferring over from initial sketch to final line to color block in. And we're in the color block in stage. And I wanted to stop here because it's important to show you some of the things I have done, right? So obviously you can tell that I've blocked in the color. I used Clip Studio Paint to do that. And right now it doesn't have any light or shadow on it, right? So what I'm going to do now is to start the rendering process. And that involves not only putting in the color, but also putting in some of the textures and some of the things that maybe the clothes have. Maybe there's a textured surface on the pumpkin. The grass has some additional elements to it. Maybe his foot has some texture, the gloves, maybe the knife has, you know, some splatters on it. Whatever it is, right? We're just going to go in and we're going to start putting some of those items in there that will make the most sense, especially in this area right here, right? All these guts and stuff that come out of here, going to have some texture in there. We're going to have some translucency in there. Maybe the goggles, you know, we'll put in some flex or something in there to, you know, to show that it's texturized, maybe some fur elements. I don't know. So the reason I wanted to bring that up, because every single step of this illustration, number one, can be planned, right? If you have a plan, right, then just like if you were to go into a desert and you don't have a map, what's going to happen? You're going to get lost and you're going to perish, right? You want to be able to have a plan, execute the plan, and in the end, you're happy with what you got. And if, you know, at the end, you're like, oh, I want to change this or change that, then you have these wonderful layers that you can go in and you can change things. So you saw, whenever I was over in Clip Studio Paint, I went in and did all of these layers as it pertains to, you know, the illustration. And now I can go in and I can start grouping. So let's group from layers, okay? And we're going to name it primary illustration. Yes. Color, we'll make it red. Okay, so now I can hide the illustration as I want to. And if I want to put a layer effect or something that only is going to show up in here, I can create a layer on top of it and a layer mask. Now, I do have clipping masks on all of these. We're going to go and zoom out a little bit. Whoops. On all of these elements, right? From color here, color there. all of this stuff. And it's clipped down to this orange, or I'm sorry, this gray layer down here. So if I were to hide all these clipping masks, I still have my gray element right here. And what's nice about this, if I decide, hey, I want to utilize this in a different place, okay, then we're going to hide it. We're going to go ahead and we're going to activate all of those. So now, if I want to, I don't know, let's say, give it a different hue, boom. So I can see all of the illustration in a value scale. So that's really important, right? Especially whenever I start going in and putting in my lights and darks. So I'm going to put you guys back on time lapse. Again, I put you on time lapse not to get rid of you, okay? I do it because if I were to sit here and talk the entire time, I mean, the illustration takes a long time. I don't know how long I've already spent on this, but between the concept sketch, the final line, I probably have about an hour and 50 minutes, almost 2 hours in this thing, right? So as I progress through, you know, the time lapse, you can basically see me building up the illustration layer upon layer upon layer, and eventually landing in the right zone. So my next step, obviously, is to go in and just start putting in some of those textures. Like, let me see here. I'll go ahead and get my brush. So right now I'm on the pumpkin layer, and I want to put in some fun, a little bit darker. And I've got if you look over here, I've got a gigantic library of brushes. This is 23 years of brushes, okay? I've got, I mean, spring 2022. I mean, I've got so many different textures in here. These are really nice. But just for posterity, we're not going to go in and explain where I got the brushes, who I bought them from, or anything like that. Just know that through time, I have collected a myriad of different brushes from a myriad of different resources. And I recommend you do the same, right? Especially if you're young in the game and you're just starting out. It does take a while to build up, you know, a repertoire of brushes. So like right here, you can see I'm going in and I'm putting in, make sure that everything's good. Yes. And I've got just enough on there. And you know, what I can do is I can actually select the black. So I make sure, and then I go and I do inverse. And now I don't have to worry about getting any in the black. So we're going to make this a little bit darker. So again, this is not shadowy. I am not putting shadows in. I am putting texture into the skin of the pumpkin, just to give it a little bit of life. And you notice I'm not doing straight up and down like this. I'm conforming to that form based upon the existing line work. See, the line work becomes important as I progress through the rendering process, right? Because I've already put in so much work in the line, I don't want to just go over all of it, right? I'd still want to have some of it there. Whoops. Okay. So let's get you on time lapse, and I will bring you back in when we're doing the light and shadow. Okay? so now I'm at a spot where I'm going to start applying the shadows. I've applied texture, I've gone in and applied some foliage, a little bit of wear and tear here on the tools in the front, a little bit of atmospherics, some dust and some leaves blowing around. Haven't really landed on those yet, so but right now, just so you understand from my point of view, I will not be adding black as a shadowing element. I typically will use a purple, depending on the scene. You know, light has color, right? Light affects color in ways that maybe we don't quite understand. And you have a lot. It's hard for me to sit here and explain color to you because it's going to take more than just one session, right? You have to understand what primary, secondary, tertiary, opposites, complements, all these different, you know, things that I learned throughout my career, and understanding what color is and how you can use color to kind of direct mood, emotion, right? There are certain colors that are affiliated with certain times of the year. Definitely, you know, and certain colors affect people in different ways. So color, to me, in an illustration, is a huge part of the narrative, right? If I were to go ahead and remove the color, right, suddenly it takes a completely different, well, not really remove the color if I do that. It takes on a completely different look, right? But the second I add color, then there's life. So as I add the shadows, as I push and pull the values, and add the values and lighten and darken and stuff like that, you're going to see the illustration come to life more and more and more. And the more I put the shadows in, and then I'll put the highlights in, you're going to see the illustration come to life more than it is even right now. And you can say, oh, the line's super important. Yes, the line's really important, but so is the color. So is, you know, the textures. So is everything. So that's why, you know, I talked about that step-by-step process. You know, we all want to get to that end. We don't want to take that journey from the beginning to the end. We just want it to be finished. And sometimes you have to go through the trenches, right, to get to the other side, to see what's on the other side. So sit back, grab a cup of coffee, if you drink coffee or soda or whatever, tea, and just enjoy the process of me putting in the shadows. here's where we're going to land with this piece. I had tons of fun working on the XPPen 22R Pro. It is definitely well suited for pretty much any type of illustration, design, sculpting, whatever you need, pretty much in any capacity. It is a wonderful machine to work on. So overall thoughts about the XPPen 22R Pro. You know, going into this, obviously I have an open mind because I want to make sure and come at this from a position not only of experience, but also of somebody that maybe doesn't have experience with large format display tablets. You know, especially as it pertains to setting things up, installing the driver, getting things done, and utilizing it. Now, this basically, this display tablet, the 22R Pro, is just a smaller version of the 24-inch tablet that I use. The 24 that I use is a 2K model, QHD, I believe they call it. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's so hard to discern and tell whenever you're working like I do in terms of the definition and the quality of the image. Now, the 2K obviously is going to be sharper, but some machines out there in the marketplace, whether it be a desktop or a laptop, don't support 2K, 4K, 8K, whatever it is. I just happen to have a machine that does. The 22R Pro with the quick keys on the side and the scroll wheels, again, that's something that I don't typically utilize, but in this demo, I decided to utilize it, and it was great. You did see me reach up occasionally for the keyboard. That's just because I have, you know, years of muscle memory that really kind of, I don't want to say works against me, but sometimes if I try and learn new muscle memory, right, I go back to my old ways, and, you know, that's just the way it is. Overall, like I said, great experience. Didn't have any issues that I could tell that were quote-unquote game changers, right? Some of the irritations that I had because I was running two display tablets at the same time. Now, from the same manufacturer, obviously, you have to understand and know how to proportion the tablets because both of these tablets have different resolutions, so on and so forth. So if you have any issues, a lot of it comes down to reading the directions, right? That's what we should do anyway. I've definitely been guilty of not reading directions before. I don't know who else might do that. But anyway, I jest. But yeah, this particular product was great. The demo that I did obviously catered toward XPPen. I love the company. I've worked with them now for over 2.5 years. They've always been very, very honest and upfront with all of their products. And, you know, I haven't had to utilize their warranty at all. Now, I have been contacted through the YouTube channel of some people that have utilized the warranties. And, you know, that's pretty much whenever you're servicing millions of people and have an electronics company, warranty does come into play. So definitely read the documentation that comes with it. And but as far as fit and finish and quality, like I said before, I use the 24-inch 2K model every single day. And I have for over 2 years, 2.5 years. And the only issue that I've had, probably because of user, that's me, was I had to replace that that applied film. And XPPen does sell that, and it was easy to apply. And, you know, a lot of that has to do with how hard you draw, how often you draw, and just basically it's going to be different for every particular user. The film is designed to last the duration of the ownership of the tablet, but at the end of the day, there are variables there, and they do address those by selling you the film. So overall, great experience, and big kudos to XPPen for pushing that envelope. And a lot of their other products, right? You're seeing 16,000 levels of pressure sensitivity. You're seeing 4K. You're seeing different price tiers. You're seeing different, different screen resolutions, different pin pressures. So XPPen is definitely going to keep progressing and being better and doing better and catching up with some of their competitors, right? You know, Wacom is not the only game in town anymore. You know, I've been a proponent to show you that you don't need to spend $3,000 and $4,000 on a display tablet to do good art. And at the end of the day, XPPen, dream, brave, and true. That's their moniker. Dream to do better. Be brave. Get in there and make the mistakes. and you know, be truthful with yourself whenever you do make the mistakes, or you do fail, that you know, you can get up and try harder. So that's all we had for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and definitely like and subscribe if you like what you see, and share, and we'll see you next time. Bye.